The scariest thing about what happened to me isn't what he did. It's how long he did it before I had any idea. 8 months. He watched me for 8 months, learned my schedule, my route to work, my favorite coffee order, the name of my cat, the layout of my apartment, before I noticed a single thing. And the way I finally noticed was so small, so easy to dismiss, that I almost did dismiss it. Almost. What's up, everyone? Grab a seat. This one hits different. Let's go. I'm a 27-year-old graphic designer living in Chicago. I work remotely, which means I spend a lot of time in coffee shops and co-working spaces. I need to be around people, or I go a little stir-crazy in my apartment. I have a cat named Fig. I run 3 mornings a week, same route along the lakefront. I'm a creature of habit, which I used to think was a neutral quality, and now understand is something a certain kind of person looks for. I didn't know Daniel. That's important to establish. He wasn't an ex-boyfriend, wasn't a co-worker, wasn't someone I'd had any kind of interaction with that I could trace back. As far as I can determine, and the police investigation filled in a lot of gaps. He'd seen me at a coffee shop I went to regularly, decided something about me, and started paying attention. That was it. That was the whole beginning of it. I existed in a public space, and he decided I was interesting, and everything after that was a consequence of that one unremarkable moment. I think about that a lot. How there was no inciting incident I could have avoided. No decision I made that put me in his path. I was just there, being a person, and that was enough. The first thing I noticed, it was a Tuesday in March. I was at my usual coffee shop, a place called Birch on the north side, where I've been going almost every weekday for 2 years. I was working on a logo project, headphones in, mostly tuned out to everything around me. I went to the bathroom. When I came back, my laptop was exactly where I'd left it, and my coffee was exactly where I'd left it. Everything was the same, except my notebook, a small spiral one I used for sketching ideas, had been moved about 4 inches to the left. I stood there and looked at it for a second. I was almost certain I'd left it on the right side of my laptop. Almost. And almost certain is such an easy thing to talk yourself out of. I sat down and told myself I'd moved it without thinking, and opened my laptop and went back to work. But I kept thinking about it. The specific position of it, the 4 inches. That night, at home, I had a feeling I couldn't name. Not fear exactly, more like a frequency I couldn't tune out. I checked my door was locked twice before bed. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was not being paranoid. Over the next 2 weeks, I started noticing other things. Small things, each individually dismissible. A mark on my apartment door that looked like someone had pressed against it could have been anything. The sense, twice on my morning run, that someone was behind me. I turned around both times and saw only other runners and an empty path. A hang-up call from an unknown number, which happens to everyone. Each thing alone. Nothing. All of them together. In 2 weeks after the notebook. Something. I started keeping a list. I don't know exactly when I crossed from I'm probably overreacting to something is actually wrong, but keeping the list was part of it. Writing things down makes them real in a way they aren't when they just live in your head. By the end of the first week of keeping it, I had 11 entries. By the end of the second week, 17. The one that broke through my denial completely happened on a Wednesday evening. I was on the phone with my friend Kat, walking home from the co-working space I'd been at that day. We were talking about something completely mundane, a TV show, I think. I turned onto my block and I saw a man standing on the opposite sidewalk, maybe 60 feet away, looking at his phone. Normal? Completely normal. Except I'd seen him before. Not once, multiple times. At Birch, near the lakefront on a morning I'd run. Outside the co-working space 2 days earlier when I left at an unusual time. Later than I normally did. Each time I'd registered his face without consciously registering it, the way you register background details you don't think you need. I kept walking. I did not look at him again. I got inside my building, locked the door, and stood in my hallway, with my heart going, at a speed I didn't know my heart could sustain, and I said to Kat, "I think someone is following me." Kat said, "Tell me everything." I told her everything. The notebook, the list, the run, the hang-up calls, 4 of them now. The feeling that had been living under my skin for weeks, and the man on my street. She didn't tell me I was overreacting. I've thought about that a lot since. How much it mattered that she didn't do that. She said, "You need to go to the police tomorrow morning, and tonight you're staying on the phone with me." I stayed on the phone with her for 3 hours. The officer I spoke to the next morning was not unkind. He was also not particularly helpful, which I understand now is a systemic problem and not a personal failing, but it was very hard to accept in the moment. He told me that what I described, a man seen in public locations, a moved notebook, hang-up calls, didn't meet the threshold for a stalking report without more concrete evidence of intent to harm or a pattern that could be formally documented. He suggested I keep a log. I showed him my list. He said to keep adding to it and come back if something more definitive happened. I went home, and I was furious in the quiet, cold way that is somehow worse than the loud kind. I thought, something more definitive. What does more definitive look like, and what does it cost me to get there? So I did what I'd done before when an official system told me it couldn't help yet. I started helping myself. I bought a doorbell camera. I changed my running route. Not by a little, completely. A different time and a different direction. I started varying which coffee shop I went to, which co-working space, which route I walked. I told 3 people, Kat, my friend Marcus, and my sister, exactly what was happening and what the man looked like. And I made them promise that if I ever didn't respond to a text within 2 hours, they would call me immediately. And I started watching for him, the way I understood he'd been watching for me. Carefully, patiently, without letting him know I'd noticed. It took 11 days to get what I needed. On a Sunday afternoon, I was at a coffee shop I'd never been to before. I'd chosen it specifically because he couldn't have known my pattern there. I'd been there an hour when I saw him come in. He scanned the room. He saw me. And something happened on his face, just for a half second before he controlled it. That was unmistakably recognition, not the recognition of someone who has run into an acquaintance. Something else, something that confirmed every item on my list. I had my phone in my hand already. I took 4 photos before he turned away. Clear, well lit, his face at 3/4 angle, time stamped, geotagged. Then I got up, walked out the side door, and called Kat. I went back to the police station that same afternoon with the photos, my written log, now 34 entries over 6 weeks, and a timestamp showing he'd appeared at a location he had no documented reason to be at the same time as me. Different officer this time, a woman named Detective Reyes, who looked at my log for a long time without saying anything, and then looked at the photos and then looked at me and said, "You've been keeping this since March?" I said yes. She said, "This is good work." Those 3 words. I cannot explain what those 3 words did to me after weeks of feeling like I was screaming into a wall. Detective Reyes ran the photos through their system. His name was Daniel. He had a prior, a restraining order filed by a woman in a different city 3 years earlier that had expired. The woman had moved away. The case had closed. He'd apparently relocated to Chicago sometime in the past year. Armed with my documentation and the prior, Reyes was able to move forward. They pulled security footage from Birch, the coffee shop, and found him on camera there 17 times in a 2-month period, always positioned with a sight line to where I usually sat. They found footage from the co-working space. They pulled phone records that confirmed the hang-up calls came from a prepaid number registered to a fake name, which is its own kind of evidence. Daniel was served with a temporary restraining order 8 days after I brought in the photos. He was arrested 2 weeks after that when he violated it. He came within a block of my building, which the doorbell camera caught with a timestamp and his face clearly visible. He pled guilty to stalking charges. The sentencing included mandatory psychological evaluation and a 5-year restraining order. I cried in the courthouse bathroom for about 10 minutes after the plea was entered. Not sad crying. The other kind, the kind that's been building for months and finally has somewhere to go. What I know now, here's what I want you to know if you are reading this and something in it is familiar. Trust the feeling. I cannot say this clearly enough. That low-frequency unease that you can't quite justify, that thing you almost talked yourself out of, that is your nervous system doing its job. It is not paranoia. It is not anxiety. It is pattern recognition that operates faster than conscious thought, and it is worth listening to. Document everything. The moved notebook, the hang-up call, the face you've seen one too many times. Write it down. Date it. Include the location, the time, any details you can. A single incident is nothing. 34 incidents is a case. Tell people. Not just one person, several. Give them a description. Give them the protocol. When I didn't respond to Kat's check-in text, she called me immediately. Every time, without making me feel like a burden. That safety net was not decoration. It was infrastructure. And if the first person you tell in an official capacity doesn't help, go back. Go back with more. The system is imperfect and underfunded, and sometimes requires you to build the case yourself before it can engage. That is not fair. It is also true. Detective Reyes was there. She existed. I just had to get to her. I still go to Birch. Not every day. My habits are more varied now, which is probably just good practice regardless. Fig is still on the windowsill when I get home. I still run the lakefront. Different times. And I have good headphones, and I keep one ear free now, which is a small thing that costs nothing. The 5-year restraining order has 4 years and 3 months left on it. I track that the same way I track everything now. Carefully, in writing, because information is the only reliable thing I found. I'm okay. I am more than okay. I'm someone who paid attention, kept a list, and got to the other side of it. You can be that person too. If this story felt close to home, please know you're not alone, and resources for stalking victims exist in every state. The National Center for Victims of Crime has a stalking helpline. You don't have to wait for something definitive to reach out. And if you watched all the way to the end, thank you. It genuinely means everything. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this, and I'll see you in the next one.